Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and get started. It's 2:04 and I don't want to go too late. I want to be sensitive to your time. Thank you guys so much for joining me. You're all kind of muted at this point. It's just going through because there's a lot of background noise typically on big groups like this. So you can just unmute yourself at any time. You're probably pretty familiar with Zoom at this point in our lives, unfortunately. But I mean, the reason this kind of even came about was just some of the building on some things that, sorry, I'm just admitting a few more people here. Just building on some of the good things that Kevin and Amy have been doing with getting us ready for next year. And oh, that was pretty cute. I think that was Anthony's son on there. That was pretty sweet. So we'll have to do, at some point, we're gonna have to do one that has, everyone can show their pets, because I've got a bunch of dogs that I can't, I have one dog now that I can share with you guys. But I wanted to touch base with you guys just on the value proposition from what was happening this week. There's been some really good information. I've also gotten some great feedback from you guys on the information that's been given this week specifically. It's all been really good. Now we're really getting into the nitty gritty of basically building our business. And that's a question that every one of you have asked me at some point on what do I do to take my business to the next level? I think that's a pretty common question this time of year. And so in order to do that, a lot of the things that Amy and Kevin had created as that platform are terrific. And if you haven't seen them yet, it was in my email to you guys where you can find the library. So if you look at the calendar invite that I sent you, in the notes section, it'll actually have the link directly to go through and see the calendar right within the Agent app. So you don't have to pull that up, and you can see the previous week's session. Specifically, it's really important that you see this week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and this morning's. So the theme for the week is really building our value proposition, and we talk about it in lots of different ways. But what I want to do now is every Friday for the next 4 weeks, because I think this is probably the most critical part of what they're doing. How do we take it and put it into action every single day, on what we're doing for building our own business, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you guys. I'm just going to take you through a really loose, not loose, I should say simple agenda. That can everybody see that? You can just give me a thumbs up if you can see it, because I have yours muted. Okay, great. So like I said, we'll just be doing this every Friday for the next 4 weeks, specifically to talk about what's coming up in the morning, It's All About Love and the Ninja Accelerator and all the things that have these themes going around them. Because a lot of times we have so many things that we're doing. How do we take this and actually put it into place? And I've got one more person. There we go. So how do we take what we're doing there and put it right into place, for our own business development? So in this, all we're talking about for today, but it seems like I'm going to say all we're talking about today, but what we're talking about is actually pretty big. So it's taking what you do differently, your differentiators, in creating a value statement. It's not a huge business plan, although it builds up to one if you're going to take it that far, which I kind of recommend. But at the very simplest level, distilled down to what we do, the value statement is the 3 things, and it should not be more than 3. The 3 things that make you a little different to work with than any of our competitors, including our coworkers. So the reason why that's important, I mean, I know there are some of us that are coming up from the city and building our business here. Some of us have been here for a while and we're just trying to take it to the next level. Others have had life events. We have things taking place with our families, with having kids, with just doing the things that we do that get in the way, well, I wouldn't say they get in the way. Those are important things. But if you're looking from your business perspective, they might be things that hold you back a little bit in the volume. And this is coming really from talking to almost everyone on this call personally on what it is you're trying to do. The next thing we're going to talk about is your statistics and stories. And again, we're taking everything that happened this week and I'm just distilling it down to exactly what I did for my business and how I distinguished myself as a brand new agent on the North Shore, coming in pretty late to the game. How did I, up against some really big agents, frankly, how do I say what it's like to work with me versus anybody else? And once I felt really comfortable with that and I was able to talk about it, and I was able to put statistics and stories to it, I became accountable. And so we're going to talk about accountability as well. These are just things that worked for me. And as we do it, if you guys have ideas and we're going through this, please feel free. This is interactive. It's not going to be another talking head for the next 45 minutes, let's say. So I want this to be interactive, and I want you guys get as much as you can out of it. This is honestly just for you. So I really want that to work for you. All right. So that being said, what I want to talk about next, well, let me first ask, is there any questions about this, or is there anything else that you guys want to make sure I cover? You can just unmute yourself.
I have a question. Did you want us to have our value statement totally complete for this? Because mine isn't.
No, absolutely not. No, this is a working session. So if you have a value statement, terrific. If you don't have, this is what we're going to work on today. If you don't, even better, because we can do it. And actually, if you have a value statement, you might even want to re-examine it as we go through this. I used to do this as a living as a consultant for businesses. So I'm treating it just like I treated my own business, which is how do we develop growth and how do we get more referrals from our current base? That was my focus for 15 years. So I know this works, and I know if we treat our business like a business, it works exactly the same way. And I mean, you guys know my background a little bit. It wasn't great, but I did get the Rolex my first year. I was able to kind of grow pretty quickly, and without any kind of sphere here at all. I hadn't lived in Chicago area for like 28 years or something like that. So a long time. So I just think these are things that work for me, and they kind of really build on what we've been hearing from Kevin and Amy, and it really does work when you put it in practice. So that's kind of where we're going with that. Any other questions about this? That was a good question, though. We'll do it together. No? Okay. Wait, it looks like I might have a chat question here. Oh, so Natasha, you don't have to download the videos. You can actually go to the link. If you guys go to the link that's within the email that I sent you, but it's also in the calendar invite for today, you can click right on there. You can watch those videos right within the app. You don't have to download anything. In fact, I'm not even sure if they do download. So it should link you over to the YouTube videos when they're there, or if they were done within our platform, they should play right within that. But let me know. Okay, his app is where he was. All right, let's talk about this afterwards then, and I'll try to figure out what's going on with you, and we can do that right after this call if that makes sense for you. Okay. Okay. Wait, it looks like I have one more chat. So sorry, I have to. Okay, great. Well, we'll figure it out for now. All right. So that being said, this is going to be a part where we're going to unmute a little bit. And we're going to talk because this is definitely the part that's interactive. Okay. So if we distilled everything that was talked about and all this week, if you didn't see any of it, which I really strongly suggest you do, because there's really good information in there that's helpful. And that's the feedback we're getting directly to. But the idea around this is that we provide the framework for your unique value statement. So what are 3 differentiating words or statements? And we're going to talk about how to develop that. And by the way, the notes for this, all the slides here are also now uploaded onto the calendar invite. If you go to the bottom and see attachments, all of this is here. So just you're aware of it. So we're going to talk about the 3 differentiating words or statements. A WIFM, I don't know, does anybody know what a WIFM is? Just so that I don't feel like I'm just talking to a screen. No? Okay. Not anybody? All right. Okay, so WIFM is it's a term that's used a lot in business development where they're talking about the what's in it for me. And this is the what's in it for me from our customers. So we can talk all kinds of stuff about why we're great and all these things. But if we don't boil it down to what our customers care about, the what's in it for me, like, that's great, you're telling me all this. Like, I'm really super happy that you are the most enthusiastic person in the world. How does that affect, what you're going to do for me, kind of thing. And then the last is measurements. So if we know what the what's in it for me, we should be able to do, we should be able to see what those measurements should correlate. And I'll talk about these we're going to go through each of these a little bit more, in more detail. Okay. Let me back up for a second. So in the what's in it for me, I'm going to, since you guys have this, I'm just going to open this up so I can see you a little bit better. But does anybody have any questions about what your differentiating words or statements should be before I get started? Like, this isn't new. Like, we've done these things before in the past, but I really want us to walk away with how you can create it for yourself. So is there anyone who's got a word or a statement that they kind of think just differentiates themselves from anybody else? No, not yet.
Crickets.
Okay, so how would crickets work as a, no, I'm just kidding. So I think that, I'll tell you what I did, all right, just to get it started. I'm such a nerd. Let me find this. So when I started the business, I don't know if you heard that coffee on Tuesday, I think I did it on the value statements. But when I started this, when I got into the business and I was working completely by myself, I created this little chart for myself that talked about what my values, vision, and mission is. And most people do it the other way around. But I just said, what is it going to be that's going to be a differentiator for me coming into a market that's pretty saturated with agents, that has a lot of big agents, and I'm so late to the table on. So there's I think a temptation sometimes when you've got a ton of experience and you've been in the business a long time, like Eve, who knows this business back and forth, versus me, who was, now I've been doing it 5 years and I still feel like a newbie every day. But when I got in, and I was in the Glenview market to start with, there were some agents that were pretty big there, not just with us, but also with Coldwell Banker and some others that sell quite a bit. So the temptation is to say, well, they've got experience, they've got they know all the houses, they've got all these things. So I want to kind of emulate what they're doing, and I'm going to look to see what they're doing. I would just tell you right now that that doesn't work. What makes you different and unique is absolutely why they're going to work with you. And there's enough business for everybody. So if you're, there was a guy in Minnesota when I did sell for about 9 months up there, who was the cow. I'm not recommending this, but he was the cowboy realtor, and he always had a hat on. He was from Texas. He did so unbelievably well by being the cowboy realtor because he came into the market from Texas. He didn't know anyone. I came from Texas as well. That's why I was kind of a little ticked at him. But he was like doing all this business. And I was like, really? You threw a hat on? And now you're like the guy? And it was really frustrating. But his value proposition then, it was kind of shticky, and he did that. But his value proposition was about honesty, integrity. I'm an outsider, so I'm not going to be, doing the things that you're going to work with somebody who's there. And the people that he attracted, the people that he worked with, tended to be people who were, like I call them expats when it comes to Minnesota, because they're pretty insular. It's almost like anyone outside of Minnesota is from another country. So he got all of the business of people moving up from Texas or from anywhere, really, because he sold himself as an outsider a little bit, and as somebody who gets it from your perspective. So that's just one way to look at it, right? For me, I kind of broke it down to, like, I looked at what NAR says are the most important things to people. And according to the National Association of Realtors, when they interviewed all these people around the country, and it always boiled down to 3 things that they cared about for a realtor. One, that we were expert negotiators, that we had expert negotiation skills. Number 2 was that we understood the market. And number 3, well, there were 4, but understanding the market's part of it. It's really market expertise, I say it was called. And then the third was that we weren't going to try to force them into a house. There were 2 sides to this coin. They were afraid that we were going to force them into a house that they didn't want or couldn't afford, or we were going to go above what they'd asked for. So you know how buyers will sometimes tell us a price, and then all of a sudden you're like working with them for 2 months and the price goes up 100, 200, 300,000, and you're like, why? Like, if we had just started this from the beginning, it would have really been so much easier on all of us. But if they're afraid that we're going to push them into things that they can't afford, and they want to test the market that way. And the other is that they're going to lose out on something that they didn't know. So the FOMO, fear of missing out. They're afraid that if we don't, that we as agents have insight that they don't have with private listings, pocket listings, some inside scoop. So that's the other thing that they're using an agent for, because they feel like they can go online and see everything, but we've got the inside scoop on a lot of it, if that makes sense. So then I really built my statement was around the fact that and I'll just tell you what I did. I mean, I was born in Glenview, so I could talk at least about being a native, even though I hadn't lived there since I was in my 20s. Well, since my teens, actually. So what I said was, I'm a native, so that talked about the expertise and the rest of it. And people do care about that. I talked about honesty and integrity, so I got onto the ethics panel and at NASBAR, and I did a lot of work around integrity, purposely, partly to learn the business, but also because I really did feel like that's a good selling point. I mean, I'm honestly, that is an important part of what you were getting when you work with me. And the other part was that I kept it fun. And so that was going to be different than, let's say, some of the agents out there that we could all think about that might not be that much fun to work with. They might be very successful, but and my clients, the people that I attracted, tend to be fun. They tended to be really honest and easygoing, and they tended to appreciate the fact that I was from from the area. So I got a lot of Chicago families moving up to the North Shore because I did have that local expertise. So, like I said, I think sometimes when I hear, and this is just my own, this is a total side note, but sometimes when I hear other agents, and this is from when I was an agent, talking about how difficult their clients were all the time, and then they would describe them, and it was always the same type of person, I just wonder sometimes if we attract people that work well with us because of our own, what we put out there a little bit, right? So I don't know if that's true or not, but it was just my own sort of observation that sometimes, however we define ourselves is going to define the type of business we do. And there's enough room for all of that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, so like the hardest part, I was thinking about this for you guys, the hardest part of being a newer agent is how do I distinguish what I am when there's all these other agents out there, or I might not even know what I am. Like I might not have a flavor for what it's like. So one of the things I did do too, and you can do this really easily, don't pick friends or colleagues, pick clients that have actually used you and then send them, there's a thing called SurveyMonkey, you can create them for free and it looks like it's coming anonymously. So they'll actually answer pretty honestly. And I can help you with that if you want to craft one of those. And I would send them a SurveyMonkey just saying, what was it like to work with Tom? And then I had a bunch of drop downs that they could actually pull just to make it really easy. And I told them they'd get a $25 Starbucks card for having done it. And then if you get 10 of those, that's $250 of people telling you who actually chose you to tell you what it was like to work with you. And you're going to see a theme. They're going to say really knowledgeable, or I felt like I was in good hands, or whatever themes start to come out of it. Then you're not just pulling it from the air and saying, I think I'm this, I think I'm that, I'm thinking that. It's really hard to know yourself. But once you've had, and once you've gotten a couple of customers and clients that have come through, it doesn't hurt to ask them. You can do it however you'd like. I just like SurveyMonkey because to me, it felt official, kind of like somebody was sending them something, and they felt like it was anonymous, so they would answer. They didn't know I was sending it necessarily. They just knew they had worked with me. And I like that. So that for me was good because it felt more honest. But you can also talk to them. You can do whatever you'd like. But when you are new, I think that the hardest part is trying to determine what it is that's going to be your business. And so you can kind of almost craft your own. And then as you start doing the business a year or two into it, you can actually come back and say, is this what we're hitting? And when I formed a team, as we started to grow, that changed again. We sat down as a team and we did this that you could talk to anyone on my team. We did this actually every 6 months where we go, are we still this? Is this what we're doing? What's our competition look? And how are we kind of pinning it against anybody else by saying, without ever talking someone else down, but you can actually talk your own points up and maybe counter them a little bit to something that somebody else is doing. Does that make sense? Has anybody got ideas on your own words, just thinking about that? Words like trustworthy, enthusiastic, all of those things are good.
I am certified.
I'm just gonna look at you guys. Oh, hey, Mike. I didn't see Mike was there. Anybody? I'm going to unmute oh, no, you guys can unmute yourselves. But I would like to hear from you a little bit, just because it makes me feel like I'm not alone here. I'm looking at the audience.
Tom, you're not alone.
You're doing a great job.
Hi, Mike.
Hello, Tom.
Hi, guys. And honestly, 18 years in the mortgage business and real estate business, I've learned something in the last 10, how long have we been on this? 10, 20 minutes, whatever. So you're doing something different, which is awesome.
Thanks.
You're making it fun.
Well, good. Well, I want to talk about you guys, but I do appreciate the accolade.
I don't have a value statement, but I'm thinking I'm going to go look at my Zillow reviews for the content for that.
That's a great idea. That's real data. It's coming from somebody else.
Tom Kelly here. Yesterday, listening to the coffee talk, it kind of inspired a couple of terms and just sort of for the purpose of throwing out an example for for you to react to. Transition is the one that I was thinking about. And the reason I say that is I moved from the city to the burbs here about 2.5 years ago. And I see that there's one, both my sphere of influence, and two, just the general population. That's a huge market right now, is sort of young families moving into the North Shore, and also sort of young professionals. And I have a marketing professional background. So I was thinking that sort of that transition point of difference on these young professionals that are transitioning their life to a suburban environment is sort of what could be one thing that sets me apart, particularly in our sort of at Properties family, where there's so many highly established agents, but maybe have been in the area for a lot longer. Whereas that could be a disadvantage because I don't know everything about the community, but it's also sort of an advantage to have a new perspective.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And definitely that's what I was doing when I was starting to get into markets like Winnetka. Well, I knew that kind of growing up a little bit, but like when I got into Glencoe or Highland Park, I completely was winging it, to be honest. I would read as much as I could before I got there and then maybe do a drive of the neighborhood. But yeah, absolutely.
So glad I'm not the only one. Thank you.
I got really good when I was so bad because I would take anything. I was out in Elgin one time and I was like, I need a passport. I have no idea what I'm doing out here. That I don't recommend. It's too far.
Yeah, right.
So I have a question because I'm looking at the packet from like the printouts from this week.
Yes.
And like I've made a list. I haven't completed it, but I've made a list of the words that I think describe me. And then we're supposed to condense the value list and then put it into like what you were saying, like what's in it for me. Basically, how do those values translate into what we do, which translates why it's good for our clients.
That's a yeah.
I haven't done any of that, but I am thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm, one of the things that struck me from, I think it was yesterday, was to say, look, what we do that everyone else does, and then what we do that is different from what everyone else does. And that's honestly, it sounds silly to say, but hard for me. I've been in this business for a while and I'm good at what I do, but for me to look at myself and say, well, it's hard for me to identify exactly what I do that might be different from all the other people who've been doing it for as long. It's weird having, not being new to the business, but having difficulty defining what I do that makes me different. And I don't know if anyone else is finding that same thing.
I like what you're saying, Billy, because I totally agree. I think we do deals with agents, all the time. I've been in the business for a long time. And, you can do a deal with an agent and be like, oh my God, like, how are they an agent? Like, they're really bad. But you do deals with people that are really good. And they work it. It's a good deal because they're working with you the way that you like to work, like you work well with them. So I agree with you. Then it's sort of like, how do I, I'd be like, wow, they're a really good agent. So how am I differentiating myself? They're honest, they're timely, they're, thorough. So those are all qualities I think of me, but if I had that as part of my value statement, how is that making me different than somebody else who are those things? And there's lots of agents that are. So
except that, to your point, like there are plenty of agents who are not those things. We've all worked with agents who've been complete jerks. They're not really, like, you don't really trust them. They might not be honest. And you sort of take those things, you assume everyone in this business has the same core values, but they don't necessarily. So maybe that is a differentiating factor. I don't know.
Well, I think.
Yeah, if I were just to, try to come up with a value statement, and, I think I'm very patient. I've worked with people for like years before they finally do something, and I'm not pushing them, and I'm, letting them know that that's okay. If you're not ready to do it this year, or, you want to wait and the right property hasn't come along or whatever. But if I were to put part of that as my value statement, I don't know that if I were saying it to somebody that it's going to come off as, I don't know how it would come off, but I've never given a value statement to anybody. So
Well, yeah, and the way that this delivers, these are great points, because the reality is, so my logo, when I created a logo, because often this comes up around the time when you start thinking about a logo, and it's like everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to put together a logo, and then you're like, wow, it's like a website. All of a sudden, it's like this becomes this monumental project, because it's more than just creating your logo. It's now that has to express what your value statement is going to be, or your value proposition. So I created a key. I had this key logo with my initials in the base of it, and then there was a house on the bottom of it, and I thought that was so clever. And then I started looking at everything. I'm like, oh, this has been done all over the country by about everyone and their mother, right? But the bottom line is, and I'll tell you, this happened. I was in Glenview, and there's agents like Missy Jurfita, several agents that use that same type of format. And what I realized, it's just like creating our branding books. You know, if you guys haven't done one, I've talked to a couple of you, but it's just like creating a branding book that's just specifically about you. And then you create the whole thing, you put it together. I can show you these when we do them, but if you haven't done it. But the reality is, the concern was, oh, well, everyone else has a key, or everyone else has a branding book, or everyone else has the same values I have. I promise you, when you're talking to somebody out there who's not in our industry, they don't know all of the stuff we know about all these other agents. They're not thinking about the business like that. That key will spend about a half a second on their gray matter as they look through stuff and go on to the next thing, right? They're really going to be developing the relationship with you. And if you have similar qualities to other people, but they're authentically yours, your authenticity is going to come through, and it's going to be what differentiates you. I promise. It's almost like I would personally say to spend less time worrying about what's different between you and others, and spend more time on just the 3 things that are authentically you, and not worry about the noise out there. You know, just don't even worry about it. So for now, I mean, the reality is you need to be aware down the road for your planning, but what are the 3 things that are most defining of you? And Billy, I'll tell you, Billy was my very, very first meeting as a managing broker. That was truly, I was on an hour, I think, and I got to talk with you, which was great. And one of the things I would say about Billy is she's very, very driven by continuing education and furthering her business. Like, you really got into the whole buyer presentation, and you really were into it. We even practiced it together because you wanted to make that happen. I was really impressed by that. So I think that, a learning culture is one of the things I had on mine, actually, that I'm always learning, that I'm always trying to improve myself. I'm trying to do these things. People really appreciate that.
See, I didn't even know that about me.
So this is why I do think, like, I like, Amy, your point about going back and looking at your Zillow reviews, or talking to your, whatever's comfortable, but sometimes the best the best direction is not going to come from our own heads. It's going to come from what other people have said about you. I worked as an agent, and I got to see Colleen McGinnis in action and showing a house. I was in Kenilworth with some people, and I adored, like, it was like so funny. I didn't know you that well. I mean, we knew each other from, some of the at properties functions, but I walked out of there, 1, knowing she's got great shoes, and 2, knowing that she really was so warm and invited. My clients loved her. That warmth really came through. So it's like everybody has their hook, right, and their shtick. So I wouldn't worry too much about what other people are doing. I'd worry about what are the 3 things that make you authentically you, and then boil it down to those three words, basically, if that makes sense.
I think one thing that to kind of go back to one of the things Tom said about other agents in our business. One thing I know I used to struggle with, years ago, I used to think like, oh, this person, you're competing against this person who's a top producer and they got all the sales awards and yada, 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 yada. But, I mean, in our business, who the top producers are, who's, winning the awards and yada, yada, yada. But people who aren't in our business, they don't know everybody in our business. So it might be a big deal in your own head, but they really don't care. If there's some big agents that all of us would know, I could throw out names, and whatever that name is, if you talk to any of your friends and family, the odds are no one will know who that other agent is. So,
yeah.
And I've been finding I get more success with people, and I'm a lot more comfortable if I just go into, whether it's appointments with new buyers or new sellers, to just go in as like, I'm just going in to make a new friend, not their best friend or anything, but I'm just going to make a new friend, and that goes a long way for me. So
yeah, and so just building on what we're talking about here, So we boil it down to those three differentiating words. You guys had really good ideas, and you had good ideas about how to get there. And as you're doing it, I would say just keep an open mind to what your customers say. You can also ask people you've done deals with. So here are three places you could check. I loved Amy's idea of checking your Zillow reviews or your reviews that come through at properties. You could also ask your clients. I mean, what a novel idea, you know? Let's ask our clients. And then the third could be asking coworkers that you worked with. Like, I have a pretty good idea of what it's like to work with Amy and Colleen, and you know, I never got to work with Eve, but I mean, you get an idea of what people are like pretty quickly when you start to talk to them. Ask people you trust what you think they're like, and there's nothing wrong with that either. And then it's sort of like, to me, like the pricing opinions we do sometimes. I mean, it's like they're great to get that data and then throw out the things that don't make sense to you, right? So it's like, to make sure that you get the one person that I really think you should include in this though is your client. They should be part of the process. So whether it's, however you get there. So I'm going to just go to the next statement here because we've got a little bit to go through. So the with them, which is the what's in it for me. So how do we take this and how do we break it down to like why does somebody care or give a rat's rear end about what you just told them? Right? So if it's going to be that I'm, I work well with professionals, that was one that came up. So if I work well with professionals because I've been one, then I'm going to understand your needs. I'm going to be able to make this happen from your perspective. I understand some people are reload experts. They're really good at that, or they reload themselves. I did a lot of reload when I first started. I think it's great, to be perfectly honest with you. Why wouldn't you do it? It's advertisement, but it's a lot of work, but I look at it as advertisement. So as you're doing a reload, I had been moved around the country a few times from New York City to San Francisco to Texas through reload from businesses. So I used that a lot when I was pitching those businesses. I'd be like, look, I've done this 3 times. I know exactly what you guys have to go through. My job is to make this seamless for you, because that's all they care about. They're already getting a great discount on everything. Now they're worried about their work. They're worried about their family. They want seamless. And so that's my message to somebody like that, if that makes sense. So you're going to take those 3 words and you're going to decide how that works for them with regards to how that, I'm sorry, somebody was just knocking on my door there. I had to tell them I'm on a Zoom call. So the what's in it for me, like I said, is like, how do you translate that and take it to a point where you can make it so that they care about why that's important to them. Does anyone have an example of that? And then we're going to move on because we do have a couple more slides to get through. I need a whispering.
That would be me. Just try, Tom, you talked about being fun. What's in it for me is making it so easy to transition into your next stage. And that's what's in it for you. Working with me, it's seamless, it's easy, and to use your term, fun. And at times it is going to be hard and we'll have to make some difficult decisions, but we'll do it together and know that I'm always there to answer your questions and to lead you through it. And, people are talking about the words that make a difference. You talked about your business. And as a former teacher, there is a process of teaching that works well. And so that's what's in it for them. So if I think what I heard today is that some of us, and I'm included in that, are afraid to pat ourselves on the back, because what I have, you might have too, but we don't know it. And that came up today. And so I think it's really important that we look inside ourselves. And I don't know if it was Billy or who said, I've been writing, basically adjectives about myself and trying to figure out who I am, that how it will translate into a value statement. That was excellent. And I agree that we get caught up with, I'm doing the same thing as everybody else, but no, we're not. We're all unique and we do it differently.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, they could be the exact same value statements on paper, but they will look very, very different in practice. So the idea around this is we've got 3 words. We've now decided what it's going to be. And for them, you can kind of take this and we're going to practice all these, you guys. You don't have to do this right now. We're going to spend some time offline doing this. So just so you know, the next then is going to be measurements. So we've said, what's in it for me? So if I talked about, I'm going to use the example of, I used to tell people, especially on the business side, that I was a former business management consultant. And there's an old adage that what gets measured gets done. And so I'm going to give you better service by getting you a better list price to sales price ratio. That's what's in it for me if you work with me. And so what I do, and as long as that's true, and I pull what other people's list price to sales price ratios are, you can pull data. And if you can, if you torture the data long enough, it'll confess to anything. So if I say that I want to have I'm going to have better list price to sales price ratio than anyone, I first did it against that at properties, and that wasn't the case. I was new in the business. I was not getting better. Then I opened it up to Glenview, and I was only matching what was happening in the Glenview market. Then I opened it up to the North Shore. Oh, but guess what? I beat that by about 0.5%. List price to sales price ratio. That's the statistic I use. So you want to have something that's going to tell your story that's truthful, but it's going to have to be the numbers that make the most sense. And we see that between I've been really impressed by how these brokerages can say that they're number one in different ways. And if you look at the small print, they all are, depending on how they've sliced the data, and it's kind of shocking. But you want to be able to talk about this in a measurement perspective. So you've got your distinguishing words, you've got why this is important, and here are the measurements that back it up. If that makes sense. There are 2 ways of doing measurements too. So there's one is left brain and right brain. So the left brain side would be, the right brain would be, okay, my list price to sales price ratio is better. I always talked about the right side too. You do not know what type of customer you have on the other end. So I always, always, always said that I'm 100% referenceable. As long as that's true for you, that's an incredibly powerful statement. I would say it's great that I've got all this data, but I'm sitting here selling you and I'm a sales guy. Let's talk about my reviews. You can look at my reviews on Zillow, and also will provide you the name of anyone that you want to talk to who's worked with me. And I won't even tell them you're calling, and you call them and do it. And I said that at every presentation. And I can tell you that it was kind of this, if you've got 2 different types of people that are sitting in that room, one's more data driven, one's more, left side brain, a little more creative, then you hit both of them with that. And as long as you can do that, then it's worth saying, right? So, it's powerful. And I see the reviews you guys are getting, and I know for a fact you're getting really good reviews. We are good agents, so I'm not too worried about it, but it gives you another way of saying, I'm really good, I'm easy to work with, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, and you can ask my customers rather than just talk to me. So this kind of talks about what I was saying here, that what gets measured gets done. And I'm going to, as a managing broker, I promise you guys, I'm going to be doing this a lot, like for you. So it's the most important thing of any business, no matter what size it is. If you can't measure how you're doing, you have no way of knowing where you're going, right? So we do a lot of stuff. We're learning a ton of things, but we really need to know our stats. And I can help you with all of this. It's one of my favorite things to do. So we can look at our statistics, and we can look at it any way you want. I have this number of transactions a year. I have this average list price. I have list price to sales price. I have original list price to sales price. There's all kinds of ways to torture this data and get it to confess to what we want it to. But it also is a good way of you looking at your business and then being able to talk about it. And then the second part is telling stories. This is a big one from Amy. I learned from Amy Core, actually, that I love. It's really, everybody loves a story. They love to hear it put in their way. And I did this sort of naturally sometimes, but I was never really thinking about it as one of my things I should do. So telling a story would be, I understand what you're saying. I had a client that had that same, let's say it's about pricing. They think you should price it higher than what you want, which never happens to any of us. so we're going through and, having that story, like, you know what? I just did this 2 days ago. I had a client. First of all, what that's saying is you're working with a lot of clients because you had one 2 days ago. Second is, I just was working with them. I can tell you there's a couple ways we can go. My job as a consultant, I'm here to help support you. We'll price it at whatever you want within reason. I'm just telling you what I think is going to happen. So it's your choice. And as soon as you give them the power back, they're like, oh, okay. And so do you really, if you want to do that, we can. but I'm going to tell you, when I've done this with other clients, we end up getting about 1% less than if we had priced it properly in the first place. That's a fact, because the NAR has done studies all over the country, and every time a house is overpriced and you have to do price reductions, it comes between 0.75 and 1% that they wouldn't have gotten if they had just priced it right in the first place. And when you can use statistics like that and talk about it from a position of knowledge because it's true, they have a tendency to go with me. I have one, I'm finishing out my business right now. I have one final one that I think we're going through the final listing presentation finally. And he was just like, I really want to try it. And I said, do you guys know Nancy Gibson in the Northbrook market? Does anyone know her? She's hilarious and I love her. And she said, I was on the phone with her one time and she said, this is what I tell my clients. She said, you want to price it higher and test it? The only thing you'll be buying is market time. With that 1% increase. And I just thought that was so funny, but it's also so her. Like, I can't say it the same way she could, but that's why her clients like her. And again, that's what I'm saying. There's somebody for everybody. Like, I couldn't pull that off the way she could. And I admire it. She's really good. So statistics, stories, and then the last is testimonials. And so I include all my testimonials in my materials. You can direct them towards Zillow. If you're doing your online presentations now, which we're really getting into, which are really great, you can link all of them right within the at drive when you present it. And you can see if they've clicked on it, what they're looking at. And we can go over that again if you're not familiar with that product, but it's kind of handy, to be honest, because you can get all that out there. But now, so you're telling them from a stats perspective, you're telling them from the other side of the brain with the stories, and then you're telling them with a third party, which is other people who've worked with me. So you've hit it on all three sides as to why your value proposition. This is all about our value proposition, why it is to work with me. Do you have any questions on that part? Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It does.
Then I won't. All right, so the last part of our session here. And I'm going to tell you, so well, I'm just going to leave this on here. I can't see all of you because of the way my screen is being done, but I would just want to hear, if you could just pipe in, how many of you have done Ninja?
Me?
Okay, a couple?
I have.
You have, okay. So
I have as well.
okay, awesome. So you have two, Jerry? Was that Jerry?
Yeah, that was me. I did it.
Yeah, so the thing about Ninja that I really liked, I mean, it's a commitment to do it, and it is time and energy and the rest of it, but it definitely changed my life my first year of the business, because I would never, ever, the three things I'm going to say right here are absolutely how I got the Rolex my first year without any experience in the Chicago market. It is the most important part. How much time, and I can't say this strong enough, it's really the truth. How much time do you guys spend on continuing education, on these classes, on doing everything we do to get busy? We're taking perfect listing presentation, which I think is really critical. We're doing the perfect buyer's presentation, which is really critical. All these things are important. But the most important thing, we do all this work, we spend all this money on going to open houses and sending out postcards and doing ads and teaming up with proper rate and proper title and doing all the things we should be doing. And then what happens is we go on a listing presentation and it's like, oh, someone just called, I'm off. you run into this thing, everything's out the door. At least this is how for me. You guys might be better than me, but I would just be like, okay, now I'm here and now I'm just gonna do it. I've got my documents and everything, but it's probably the third time I've ever gone through it in my life. It's the time I'm doing it with this person, right, when you're first starting. Or if you haven't done business in a while, it still happens. So I think that you absolutely have to practice this. And I'm going to tell you that some of the bigger agents in the city and some of these people that are doing Ninja who are doing $50, $60 million a year, absolutely practice their listing presentation, and they have practiced their buyer's presentations, and we all did it together. I had a accountability partner, and every week we practiced one way or the other, and we gave each other critiques. So when I say perfect practice makes perfect, it means that if there's an area you feel the slightest bit uncomfortable about, and if you don't have one, you're lying or you haven't done it. Because we all have one section. I'm not calling you liars, but you know what I mean? You're lying to yourself. But the reality is everybody has an area where they feel a little bit like, this is my weird spot when I get into that part of the presentation. If you're not practicing that, then shame on you, because this is what we worked all that way to get to that, and then we don't get a close. It's because we didn't practice that part, and I promise you that's the truth. So the more you practice this, the better. And the part that you feel uncomfortable about is the area you've got to dig in on really hard. So I don't know if you can see this, but all right, I don't look like it because I'm heavy, but I did the Ironman triathlon, and I did that. I've got that up there and there. I'm proud of it because it's crazy. I don't know if you know what it is, but it's 144 miles. It's a 2.5 mile open water swim.
It's ridiculous.
And
You did that?
And then it's a 110-mile bike ride, like the Tour de France, and then it's a full marathon, and you've got 18 hours to finish it. You start in the dark out in the ocean, and you end in the dark, or I do, because I'm not that fast. So most of us did that. But I did that because I was even heavier than I am now, and I was sitting on some couch eating Lay's potato chips. I was like, oh, I could do that. And my friends were like, yeah, right. And the way you get to that is by practice. Like I promise you, if I could do that, anybody could do it. There's nothing special about it. It's just crazy, but you can do it. But the thing is if you, and what I had to focus on was the run. I'm a swimmer. I like swimming. I like biking. I biked a lot, but I'm not a runner. I'm like a hippo running down that hill, going like so slow. And so I knew that was going to be the area that I had to focus on. And as much as I didn't like it, I practiced more on that part of the triathlon. And it absolutely, I finished happy. I finished standing up. I came not on a stretcher. I did all of that, and I had a great day. And the thing is, the same thing happens with this, is like, if you guys practice this part of it, and I can't tell you, this is our game. This is our game. If you don't practice these things, it's so, I'm sorry, I keep, like hitting on it, but I'm just stunned at how many people don't. And then when I've asked about it, they'll be like, oh, you do that? Who would sit around and practice? And I'm just like, all right, well, then don't complain. That's kind of where I'm at. But so what I'm going to ask you guys to do is to pick accountability teams. So out of the people that are here, and I can send you the list of people who came. Some people, I think it'd be best to start with people who actually came to this, because there were people that signed up, and a lot of times we get really busy, but try to pick someone here. I always say, don't pick your posse. So do not pick people that you're going to end up having a glass of wine giggling about, like actually, that would be me. But going out and actually picking somebody that maybe is in a different area, so you feel comfortable, or might have a very different viewpoint. I don't know if you guys know Virginia Trucks in the Columbia office. She was from CB long ago. She was my accountability partner when we did, that's great. So she was my accountability partner, and we would really push each other. Like we're friends, but at the same time, we weren't so close that we didn't not do it. So we actually practiced once a week on our listing presentations. We practiced on our buyer presentations, and we got better and better, and we were kind of critical with each other. I think you can actually pick groups of 3 or 4 is a little bit better, because sometimes that person can't make it work and you still have to get your practice in. But is that something you guys think you can do?
I think it's something we have to do.
Yeah, I think it really helps. But I think if that's the case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop sharing because I want to see all your little faces. So if you agree, except for Aaron, Glenn, Christy, Stacy, Anthony, and Jerry, because I can't see your faces, but if you agree with this is the way to go about it, if you could raise your thumb and say that you're actually going to do this, I would really appreciate it. If you don't feel like you can do it, that's okay. Don't raise your thumb. But okay, it looks like most of us.
Yeah. I would love this. I don't know so many of the people on the screen. I'm technically out of Glencoe, so I'm just like stealing,
You're not stealing. This is awesome. You're part of the group and you're contributing, and we're all in this together. So,
but yeah, it sounds great, and I do think that's important. I would need help getting introduced to people. That's all.
Okay,
Could you send us the list?
That's exactly what I was about to suggest, Katie. That's a great idea. I'll send you guys the list. You can decide how you want to divide it up. I would say 3 or 4 people. I was going to do the whole count down the group and go, you're 1, you're 2, you're 3, and 4. I still think that works in Zoom very well. So what I'd like to do, let's see if this works. If anyone can't find an accountability partner, let me know, and we'll definitely get you in the groups. That's why groups of 3 or 4 are a little bit better anyway. And I think that's one of the things we missed a little bit, because we all get really busy. So, hi, Natasha. I think your video just started there. Oh, she's off again. So what we can do, though, is if you don't find someone, or if you can't make that work, then I'll help assign you to a group or whatever. But out of this group of people, there's quite a few on the call, actually. I'll put out the list, Katie. I think that's a great idea. You guys can decide how you want to start it. And then what we'll do is if anybody can't find someone or you just don't know someone, this isn't like dodgeball. I was always the last picked on dodgeball and I always felt really bad. But this will be something that we actually work together on and make that happen. Okay. And this is a long game. Like we're doing this for 2021, but it is a long game in this because if you really want to hit, for those of you that haven't hit the Rolex, and I know several of you on this call that I'm looking at have expressed an interest in doing that this year. I promise you, I promise, I don't say this about too many things. I promise this is the fundamentals for making that happen.
All right.
Very cool.
All right, so what we'll do next is, this also has been recorded. Probably should have done it ahead of time. That sounded so ominous, but I mean, it's here if you want it. So in case you want to see how that works, I can send it to you if you want the data. You have the sheets that we use that are, just the outline. They're not super helpful, but the sheets that you have from the work that was being done this week is really great. Again, they're all on the Agent app there. I'll get with Natasha. I think it was you who said you couldn't make that work. So I'll get with you right after this to make sure you get the data. And if you guys have any other questions, let me know. We'll do this just 3 more Fridays. If it's useful for you, I'm happy to do this as long as we need to. This is the whole idea, right? Especially in this time when we can't come in and meet very easily. This could be a good format for us to just at least, kind of take this on from this perspective.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you,
Good seeing
Tom.
you guys.
Bye.
Everybody. Have a good weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.